Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I have a special guest. This can be a real treat for the people that listen to the podcast. Scott Milas will be joining us today from Massachusetts, if I'm correct? Western Massachusetts?
Yep, Western Mass. Yep, right outside of Springfield.
Western Mass. So both of us understand snow and not so nice weather. But today, it's going to be nice and warm. We're going to have a great conversation. Scott brings a number of things to the table. One of the things that he can talk about, and we might talk about, is career transitions. But more importantly, the idea of possibly owning, running, or being a franchisee. And so, Scott, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for joining me and taking some time to enlighten me, as well as maybe enlighten my listeners to some new opportunities and just growing our knowledge. So thank you so much.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. So as I was kind of reading your bio and kind of doing some research on you, there's a lot of great things. A lot of things that really excited me about having you on the podcast is from the idea of the infinite banking concept. We talk about a lot about storing money is not ideal. So we want to build up our money. We want to have it safe, secure, liquid. But what's the next idea? What's the next step? In the sense that we want to have our money flowing. We want to have our money working for us. And so part of that is, where are we putting our money to work? And so the idea here is to introduce you to some ideas, some thoughts that maybe you hadn't had before. Or really just introduce you to people that maybe you've had this question before. It's like, I'd really like to get into this idea of owning a franchise, either from a absentee owner or being actively involved. And so Scott's got the answers to those, and we're going to talk about those today. So tell me a little bit about your background. I understand that you were in the press corps in the White House. That had to be a lot of fun, not really, but
yeah, a lot of fun. Long time ago.
A long time ago.
That's when everybody got along, and we won't get into that conversation. But yeah, I was a member of the White House press corps. Actually, was a cameraman during the last, mostly for Reagan. So that was enjoyable, very exciting. But got burnt out, and just really had a calling for business. It's really kind of where my heart's always been.
So what led you down this pathway where you're at? It's a lot of the conversations I have with clients are, I have a good understanding what my values are, what my founding principles are, and a lot of my clients have the same idea that here's what's important to us. And I'm guessing that you knew that in your heart, and you knew that in your mind as well. But eventually you had to say, okay, I'm probably doing all right financially, but I'm not really fulfilled with what you're doing. And so then you were looking for something a little bit different.
Yeah, my parents were big believers in education. I was not. I was always more of that hands-on guy. You know, if I put my hand on the oven, I knew it was hot. I knew not to put my hand on that oven again. So I kind of clawed and chewed my way through high school, pushing and complaining, and ended up going to a private school. And look, I'm glad I did it. It was a great experience, but then I tried college and it just wasn't for me. So I always had a passion for the food industry. I grew up on Long Island, New York, a place called Huntington, working for an Italian family in their pizza place. I started making pizzas when I think it was 8 or 9 years old. Their father was my baseball coach. There were 4 brothers. And I just fell in love with the food business. And I came home my sophomore year. I quit college. And I had my bags packed, and my father said, "What are you doing home?" And I said, "I'm not going back. You lend me $20,000. I want to open a pizzeria with this family on Long Island." Now, I won't tell you what he said because this is a mature audience. But he made the suggestion that I go to the McDonald's School of Management, because back in those days, we're talking the late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, I guess it was, to go to McDonald's School of Management and learn about this food thing that I liked. Now, I won't tell you what I said to him when he wanted me to go to McDonald's, because the conversation went back and forth. But anyway, so I just started being an entrepreneur. I quit college and I just started opening many different businesses. I finished up a career in the news media. I got into the printing industry. I owned a recruiting agency, built that up, sold it. I just owned many different businesses, and ended up helping a friend of mine out here in Western Mass, and his son opened a pizzeria, and his brother, turning out, was starting a burger concept. So joined the burger concept, got involved in the development side, and helped build it up to, 165, 170 units. Loved franchising, was in it with them for almost 10 years. When it came time to be a partner, they passed. And that's when I said, you know what, it's time to go. My calling is really business ownership. So what I did is I just took all my experience, started a consulting company where I help people research and explore business ownership, career transition, people to diversify a portfolio, people that maybe want to get into a franchise for the first time. So that's really how this all started, and it's been a great ride.
Well, yeah, I know there's more to that story than just that little synopsis, but I want to go back to a little bit from your dad's perspective, right? So this idea of and I use McDonald's as a great example, right? Is that the best burger in town? Absolutely not, right? Hopefully not. Hopefully you can get better burgers. I can do better burger in my own yard. But they do teach you some things from a franchise perspective, right? It teaches you consistency and management of expectations and leading you say, hey, this is how we're going to build it. We're going to build it the same way each and every time. And we're going to set the expectation that when you come into any one of our stores, you're going to get the same experience in Fargo, North Dakota, or out in Western Mass.
Exactly. Yep.
And there's a lot to be learned from that. I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but when you mentioned your dad talking about that, I've got a couple of clients that are McDonald's franchisee owners, right? And that's the thing that they drive home is like you can learn so much by going through that training in that school, even though like you think, oh, it's just McDonald's, or if it's Wendy's or whatever it might be, they teach you the consistency of setting those expectations for your clients and then meeting those expectations each and every day.
Right. Yeah, you'll find most McDonald's franchisees, people who own the business, aren't behind the counter or taking orders. Or one of the things that I think the message, at 63 now, when I go back those 40-something years ago, the message I think my father was trying to tell me, and he was absolutely right, and this is the beauty of a franchise, is that there's a lot more than, hey, do you want cheese on your pizza, or do you want pepperoni and peppers, do you want large or small, and what time do you want to pick it up? There's the business side of it. And that's the beauty of franchising is that, and what he was trying to say is that's all bundled up and wrapped up for you. And you just have to learn the process and how to delegate those processes and systems to be successful. Because what I've learned over the years is that people that fail in franchising are the people that can't follow the process. And that's the difference between kind of that entrepreneur who's a visionary and wants to develop all those processes and systems themselves. And that's great. If you have the time, energy, and effort to do that and the money, great. But with a franchise, you're coming in and getting trained on those systems and just being able to delegate them. So that's what I think the message my father was trying to tell me. And he was right.
Right, 100%. That's why I say credit to your father, because it's not the idea of, and just a good example, my wife loves to cook, so everybody's like, oh, you should start your own restaurant. And she's absolutely not. She says it's not that she doesn't love to cook, would love to be able to do that, but she doesn't want to run the business.
Right.
And that's the whole part of it that's people don't get, right? There's how many good restaurants in your neighborhood have closed down, they had a great product, they just weren't running the business. They were busy running the kitchen and they weren't running the business. And that can be said for every business, for my
any
business.
type of business, any type of service-based business. It's funny, I used to use the cliche when I was talking to people about getting into the fast casual burger concept that I was working with. And we used to get people that from 5-star, 4-star chefs that, can I do this? Can I do that? And I used to use the cliche, do me a favor, call the CEO up at McDonald's and ask him if you can change the golden arches to green arches and let me know what he says. So I say, if that's what you want to do, then start your own burger concept. But that's not how we do it here. It's
right.
Great ideas are great, but
yeah, and I think what people miss about franchise, at least what I can see in my understanding, is that what they've done is they've packaged the food part of it, and like McDonald's. So just pick on McDonald's today, but the part that you're really buying is that management side of it, right?
Yeah.
Is that part that most people don't have a knowledge of how to run. So you either experience it, learn it through experience, which is costly, right? Or you pay for it, which is costly by having somebody else saying, okay, this is how it's done, this is what we've experienced, this is what we do, and it's successful for us. So you can either buy into that or spend your own money to create your own experience from a business standpoint.
Those are called royalties on the franchising side. That's what I tell people. It's that people hem and haw about royalties. And I said, well, that's great, but if you're going to go out and start your own business, you're still paying, you still have to pay to develop those systems. Yep. And you're probably going to pay more than what you would pay in royalties. So you got to do the math. You got to validate it. So
right. In Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, which is what we teach out of for the infinite banking concept, he talks a lot about what is your cost of acquisition. And your cost of acquisition could be many things: your time, your talent, your brain power, and that's one of them. the lack of knowledge to understand how to run one of these type of businesses can be very costly, and you don't know it until you've gone through it, and you can say, oh, that's what the cost was. And a lot
That's
of
the beauty of franchising it. That look, there are over 3,000 franchises out there. Now, not all of them are good ones. The beauty of franchising. You can find one with a lot of moving parts, like a McDonald's, or you can find something that doesn't have a lot of moving parts, and then maybe it's just 1 and 2 employees. So there's that's the beauty of my business, is getting somebody or helping somebody find that why. Why do they want to do this, and what do they want? That's the key.
and maybe speak to that a little bit, is because, again, if I say franchise, the first thing that hops in my mind is the Burger King that's across the street that stinks all the time, or McDonald's, right? But that's what we first think of. But there's like you said, what'd you say, 3,000, over 3,000 other franchises?
Over 3,000. Yeah. Yep.
So maybe
you got to get past the fact that you got to get past the $5 foot long and the Big Mac. There's a lot more out there. Chick-fil-A, it's not a franchise, it's a license agreement. I probably get 20 calls a week, and you help me get a Chick-fil-A. You can put your name on the list of 10,000 people. They're going to pay you a salary, pay you a percentage of the profits, but you don't own the business. You can't own the real estate. You can't sell the business, then own the real estate. So you just got to get past what's out there and kind of find, there's a franchise for everything out there, really, when you think about it.
Right. That actually leads to, how valuable is it for you to know, I go back to Simon Sinek, right? He talks about knowing your why.
Yep.
And if you understand your why, and he tells a story about the difference between Microsoft and Apple, right? So they talk about their why all the time at Apple. It's, here's why we do what we do, not how we do it or what we do. He says, here's why we do it. And if you, from a personal side, if you understand what your why is and why it's important to you, or understand what your value system is, then it's a whole lot easier to find those opportunities that will fit into that why. Is that fair to say?
That is absolutely, it's the biggest step in my process in getting to know my clients and helping them get to know, whether it's $100,000, whether it's $500,000 or $1 million. Why do you want to do it? It's important. If you're in career transition, you don't want to do this because you lost a job and you're looking to replace a job. That's just not a valid reason. If you're in a career, the reason to invest in a business or a franchise is not because you don't like your boss. It just doesn't work that way. There has to be a progression here, the scalable side. I was talking to a client last week, and he was earning about $250 a year and been in corporate America for 12 years. He said, yeah, I'd love to own my business, but I need to earn $250 a year. And I said, that's great. I said, how long are you willing to wait to earn $250 a year? He says, I got to earn it tomorrow. And I said, how long did it take you to earn $250 a year where you are now? You've been working for how long? You said 10 years. Is it the same company? He says, no, it's 3 companies. But so I said, it took you 10 years to get to that level, right? I said, so don't you think it's fair that there's got to be an escalation, a step? Look, there aren't too many places you can invest $100,000 and make $250 your first year. That's just, sometimes reality has to set in.
Yeah, I think the guy that's selling that is Bernie Madoff. Isn't he?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
In the insurance business, I always talk, there's a couple things I want to touch about. One is there's no deals in the insurance business. And I would say that's fair about every industry. There's no deals to be had, right?
That's right.
If there is, you got to be a little careful,
We call it there are no secrets in franchising, because the last thing you want to do is be sitting down next to somebody at a conference, another franchisee, and find out that they're paying lower royalties than you.
Right.
That'd get you pretty aggravated, wouldn't it?
You'd have an uproar pretty quick, right? Yeah. So, but that there's some truth to that, is in the sense that we're playing the long-term game, right? That's the whole point. It's What are you looking for? And anything worth having is going to take a little longer. I've had guests on here that we've talked about buying raw land or real estate, and every one of them says, that it takes time. There's always that time element of that. And the other side of that equation, I heard a guy in real estate say this one time too. He says, time has erased a lot of my mistakes. So if you have to have some time in order to stick into these things, whatever it is, right? I'm here to learn a little bit more about the franchise side of it, because I'm excited about this personally and for my clients to hear about this, but it doesn't happen overnight. And it's obviously got to be something where we have to study and understand, get good financing in place, have great liquidity, and then we can be talking to you, Scott. And
right.
By the way,
Look, I have a client of mine who's diversified in franchising. It's a number of different concepts, but his largest client is 85 Great Clip salons. And he owned a couple of Harley dealerships and some various, and he invested in a tree company that takes down trees. But if you looked at the guy and you said, you own Great Clip salons, he'd be like, he's telling you, you know what, Scott, you're right. A lot of people scratch their head, but I don't cut the hair. But on the real estate side, out of my 85, 30%, I own the shopping centers or the real estate. So not only am I making money on the Great Clip side, the services that I'm providing, but I have people, I'm paying myself rent and building up the value of real estate. Yeah. So there are businesses like that where you can actually open a franchise, own the real estate, and then maybe sell the business down the road, and then keep the real estate and get somebody to pay you rent every month, reoccurring revenue. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of moving parts. I have a business that where you can eventually own the real estate, and it's one employee. It's a Monday through Friday type business. So
interesting. Before we got on the air and started recording, we talked about there's a couple of different pathways people can follow, right? So maybe speak to that a little bit. And you just kind of did, but I want you to expand on it a little bit in the sense that if somebody's looking for that career shift, right? They're saying, I'm looking for, again, I don't want to say looking for a different job because the job is not fulfilling. It's not something that's going to be a long-term. You're not creating wealth for yourself. You're creating wealth for somebody else with it. It's just like the insurance business where that I'm in. It's a terrible job, but it's a fabulous career.
What's the saying? You probably would know the stats better, but and correct me if I'm wrong. What is it? 95% of billionaires own their own business. Now, I'm not saying that franchising, please don't hold me to this, that franchising is going to get you to be a billionaire, but what I'm saying is that, and to your point, if you're looking for that direction to build your wealth, franchising, business ownership, even on the independent side, to me is the way to go. I don't know too many billionaires that don't own their own business, or even millionaires to be exact.
100%. Most of the millionaires don't work for somebody else. They work because they're working for other millionaires, right? So it's hard to split that way. So part of this is finding the right path for the right person. So again, I have a lot of my clients are looking for passive opportunities. They're like, yeah, I'm busy being a doctor. I'm busy farming. I'm busy in my career that I'm chosen now, but now I want more because I want to provide for my family. I have this legacy plan in my head that if I truly want to have passive income and make this intergenerational, make it a legacy in my family, I need to have that income flowing in. If I'm working, not working, sitting on the beach, dead, or into the third or fourth generations. And so there's those people, and there's also those people that say, hey, I want to get involved. I want to get my hands dirty, and I want to be involved from soup to nuts on this thing because I want to see how it works and I want to make it mine. And you can help both those avenues, right?
Yeah, definitely. Look, when you get involved in a franchise, and now when I say a franchise, this is a business that you've made a validated decision to invest in. You're lowering your risk of failure versus going out and doing it yourself. You can find those stats anywhere on the internet. That goes without saying. But that's not to say that there isn't failure in franchising. There is, because typically people that fail, as I mentioned to you when we were talking, that people that fail at franchising don't follow the process. They want the model, and then they want to dress it up and do it the way they want to do it. It's just not going to work. First of all, the franchisor is not going to let. I remember when in the burger concept we started, we had a franchisee who owned another concept, and in that concept they were selling roast-to-tier chickens. So he decided that he wanted to sell roast-to-tier chickens in the burger restaurant. He just couldn't do that.
It doesn't look like a burger.
Great idea, but you know what? So, but to answer your question, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of risk reward out there in the franchising industry, and there's a lot of simple business models where you can own the real estate, a need versus a want, and reoccurring revenue. Those are the things that are important for me to stress to my clients that I tell them that they should be looking for.
Yeah. So just to be clear, where do you fit in this picture? Are you a person that helps people clarify what they're looking for, how to get there, charge a fee to kind of hold their hand and walk them through the process?
Don't charge a fee. Okay. Great question. So let me see. So if someone was to pick up the phone and call me, contact me, the first step in our process is to have what I call that half-hour, 60-minute call. I call it the father-son talk and the mother-daughter talk. That's what I call it. Let's put it on the table. Let's start building some trust. Let me get comfortable with you. You get comfortable with me. Because I'm a consultant. There are a lot of consultants that do what I do. So I would encourage clients, if you're not comfortable with me, then find somebody you're comfortable with. Then it's really kind of digging into the different types of businesses. I break it into 4 different categories and really just kind of painting that picture, what I call also developing that roadmap, that path. And then it's introducing them to 4, 5, 6 different opportunities and maybe picking 1 or 2 just to start that conversation get to know the brand, and really start validating, really start asking those questions, talk to franchisees, and then eventually being able to make a validated decision. Now, you may go through the process and realize, hey, this isn't for me, or we didn't find the right one, start over again. But I am compensated by the brands that I represent. I have over 500 in my portfolio. I'm part of the International Franchise Professional Group. It's what I call kind of a referral network, a license agreement that I pay. They help validate all the brands, different categories, and that's how I'm compensated. So my clients don't pay me a fee. The brands that I represent do.
Okay. And so when you say validated, maybe you can reduce my level of ignorance. What does that mean in your world?
So a validation could be it could be a numbers thing. So every franchisor has what's called the FD, the Franchise Disclosure Document, that's required by the Federal Trade Commission. In the FD is typically what's called an Item 19, and that's the income projections. But as you're a numbers guy, averages, when you talk averages, there's a high and there's a low.
Right.
So what percentage of your franchisees are in the high? Where are they in the middle? Where are you in the low? And where do you want to be? Hopefully you want to be in the top. So start talking to those franchisees. Get out there. The other part of validation is the operation and marketing support. When you're buying into a franchise, you're buying into the support mechanisms. So is the support level there? Are you comfortable with the people that you're going to be working with? Are you comfortable with the systems and the brand? Technology, I just did a whole podcast on technology, is a big part of franchising right now and being successful. So those are what I'm talking about in the validation side. And again, you got to get into the weeds and learn more. And you may turn out that, hey, look, I love the brand, I love the concept, but you know what? I just don't like the vision of the brand. I don't like the ownership group. I don't like the operations team. And those are reasons for not moving. So you don't have to love somebody, but you got to be able to feel that you're going to get along.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is you have to understand the reason why you might not want to do it, right? So that's almost as important as why you want to do it.
Yeah. My responsibility to my clients is really to help them decide why they don't want to do it as much as they want to do it. You got to go with your instinct and your gut. Numbers don't lie. I learned that a long time ago in life from my father, and you just got to make the decision. But if you think you're going to fail, or you think this isn't going to work for you, then don't do it. Franchises are awarded; they're not sold.
It's a good point. Good point to be made. Is that most people think you can just go buy whatever franchise you want.
No. Trust me, I've seen people I've had people sitting across the table from me that 7-8 figure portfolios, and they couldn't get anyone to award them if they just.
Why is that?
Attitude. They're better than the franchisor. They know more than the franchisor. I remember one of my clients told the franchisor, "Maybe one day I'll buy you." They're just. The first question is, how much money can I make? So it's like dating. You don't go on a job interview and ask, how much money are you paying me before the interview starts? You have a general idea.
That's a great point, because what we have to understand is that, and I want to circle back to this a little bit. You talked about how do we franchise our own company, right? Is that correctly?
Yep, that's a service that I provide as well.
And I want to talk about that in a little bit. But the point you're just making is that this is their brand, this is their reputation, this is this person's dream, and they're allowing you into that business.
I think the easiest way to look at this, Wade, is that when you're looking at a franchise and going through the stages, the process, you have to understand that franchisors want to set you up to be successful, because that 5, 6, 7%, whatever they're receiving in royalties, that's their income. They don't want to set you up to fail. They want those royalties. They're looking. I kind of look at it. What was that movie with Clint Eastwood about the baseball player learning to hit the curve? Or whatever it was. Remember, it's the same thing. It's like a general manager, a scout in sports, trying to find that superstar franchisee, potential franchisee. That's what the franchisor wants. Now, not everybody's a superstar, it turns out, but as we know, not everybody's an Alex Rodriguez or a Babe Ruth or whatever. But so franchisors don't want people that want to fail. They want people that succeed.
Right. And they probably see the good along with the bad.
Yep.
It's like, they're probably easy to recognize when they come across the table from them.
Yep.
So I want to go back to this idea of, I have a business, or I have this idea, or I want to franchise something, my own business or my own company. Speak to that a little bit, because I don't think a lot of people give that much thought. It's like they've created something, they don't see much value beyond what they're doing or their input, and maybe there's a great opportunity there that they're completely missing.
The easiest way to look at it is that if you have a business now and is profitable and you want to scale it, there are two roads you can go down. You can open your own additional locations, hire the staff, pay the salaries, develop the systems, the management, whatever it is to open that location. The second option is you can start franchising your business and find somebody like me and say, hey, Scott, I have a business. I'm looking to expand, and sell me the franchise, the rights to that license, a license to that business, and allow me, based on the systems, how you developed your first one that's profitable, to implement those systems and run the second one. So as the owner, you're now collecting the franchisor. That's what we call the franchisor of the concept. You're collecting royalties on my business. I'm earning money building my own business based on your success and systems that you developed.
That's interesting. And most people probably don't even think about it from that standpoint of, probably part of it is because they have no idea, like, how do I even make a franchise, right? And that's something where you would step in and give that advice, is like, if I have a profitable ongoing business and I want to grow this thing, but I have no clue, absolutely no knowledge on how to make that happen, you have the knowledge to be in business.
Yep. It's a quick way, not a quick way. It's an easy, safe way to scale your business, and at the same time, reduce some of the headaches to opening that second location, and capitalizing on income that person that you're sold that franchise to.
Very interesting. So, real quick, let's get a plug. I don't think I did this at the beginning. I apologize. To get a hold of you, can you give us your contact information, your website, and telephone number?
Sure. Believe it or not, I still use the phone. I still call people, 860-751-9126. You can email me, Scott at Scott Milas, and Milas is M-I-L-A-S, so Scott at ScottMilasFranchiseCoach.com, or just visit my website, ScottMilasFranchiseCoach.com. Fill out the inquiry form, and I'll reach back out to you.
Perfect. And we'll have that information in the show notes. So just want to make sure we got a plug in for your company. So I find this extremely interesting and hopefully very helpful for the people that are listening. So couple of the questions I had, first, I think there's a perception that it takes lots and lots of cash to buy into a franchise or to be part of what you do. Can you speak to that a little bit? Somebody says, hey, I got $100,000 sitting in my policy. I want to put it to work. Is that enough to even get your attention?
Yes, absolutely. That is a good starting point, 75 to 100,000 liquidity. Doesn't mean you're going to use it. There are financing options out there, SBA. Believe it or not, the 401k rollover plan, the ROBS plan, is a very big plan for people starting businesses, because you're utilizing your own money in your 401k, not paying interest, and you can pay yourself back on the 401k side. So I have more information. People can talk to me about that. But $100,000, you should have a net worth of about $250,000, $300,000. That's how franchisors establish their credentials for being considered liquidity and net worth. But there are brands out there that require you $500,000 liquidity and a net worth of $1 million. So really depends on the direction, short and long-term goals. But I can definitely fill in the gaps on what you should be looking at based on the investment level.
Right. Okay. So going back to that, just if you think this is with those minimum standards, if that makes sense to you, say, hey, I want to know more, just reach out to Scott either through his phone or through his email. Next question I had was, obviously there's certain characteristics, certain that I would call successful franchisees have, right? What would you say were like the couple key characteristics that people have that are successful in doing this?
Visionaries, they want to scale. They're hungry for success, but they don't necessarily want to develop all the bells and whistles and develop the menu, best practices, systems. People who can follow a process. That's a key. Not everybody can, and that's okay. It's part of what we are as people. So I would say those are the characteristics. You've got some time. And again, that's one of the things that we talk about in the consulting process, is how much time do you want to put into this? Are you looking at 40 hours a week, 10 hours a week? Believe it or not, there are franchises out there now where the franchisor will run the business for you. So not only are you paying the royalties, but you're paying a management fee, and your obligation is 2-3 hours a month just to go over the P&L and the review of the business.
So it's kind of like owning real estate, rental property, plus having a management company doing
it
for you as well. So
exactly. Yep.
It can be pretty much
passive.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. So again, I go back to, I've had a lot of interviews with people in real estate, rentals, and different stuff like that. And obviously, there's a 5 to 7 year window before it really starts, what I call getting the cash flow that you really want. Because obviously, there's startup costs, there's cost of acquisition. What does the time frame look like with a franchise when you say, I want to get into it and I really want to have a positive cash flow by year X, whatever it is, 3, 5, 8, 10 years?
I think a lot of that has to do with how you're going to finance your business. Obviously, if you're paying cash, your window is going to be considerably less paying yourself back. But typically, you can look anywhere from 2 to 4 years is a reasonable time frame. 2 to 3 years. I've seen people do it sooner, but it really kind of depends on. Look, I've had owners, people who invested in a business and had the means not to pay themselves a salary in the business for the first couple of years. And they kind of got it out of the way to pay themselves back. So they paid the loan back, but didn't take a salary or took a smaller salary. So it all depends. It's like anything else. You're going to take $100,000 out of the bank and buy a piece of property. Now what are you going to do with the property? So again, it's strategizing, it's understanding the numbers, the return on investment, and making a decision. As I said to you before, that validated decision if it's gonna work.
Yeah. Yeah, I know one of the things that you put out in some of the stuff is that there are some essential steps in researching the right franchise for you. And we've talked about that, right? What's your goals, vision, time frame? Is there anything else you want to add to that as far as some of the 4 essential steps?
Put yourself, whether it's me you're talking to, another consultant, talking to a franchisor direct, put yourself in the position to want to learn. Get to know your know, K-N-O-W. I tell my clients there's no such thing as a stupid question in this process. If you got the question, ask it. Nobody's going to judge you based on the questions you ask. Right. As long as but if you're going to pick up the phone and call me or call a franchisor in your first conversation, and the first question is, how much money can I make? I always relate it to if you were sitting next to your wife or your significant other, flash back whatever X amount of years it is, and you ran into them at a bar, and the first question you asked each other was, how much money are you going to make? Or how much money do you make? Or how much money do you have in your bank account? You probably wouldn't be married to the person. So they wouldn't be significant. So it's the same thing. I mean, there's a professional approach to this. There's a series of process to get you to the information to make that decision, that validated decision. So that's my best advice.
Yeah, I would, hopefully those that are listening to the podcast know very strongly that I believe in Nelson's book, Become Your Own Banker. And one of those things he talks about is the arrival syndrome, right? So fight the arrival syndrome, which is the point where you know everything. And once you know everything, you can't be taught anything. And so fight that, be accepting and understanding that there's 1,000 times more information out there that you don't know than what you know. And so
yeah, and I think the other thing is, and I'll say this, and don't let your ego get in the way because you have a lot of money. Be reasonable. Look, I remember I've had clients that talked to me, told me, hey, I'm going to do 30 of these. I want to buy 30. I want to invest in 30 locations, 30 territories. And I go, why? What's your plan? How are you going to run 30? What's your development schedule? Oh, I just want 30. Franchising isn't about telling your friends you just bought 30X and you're going to develop them. Telling your friends is I bought 30 and I opened 30. That's the success story. So don't let your ego get in the way because you have a 7-figure or 6-figure liquidity. It can really bite you in the bullet because franchisors don't have to award you the franchise. They don't need you as much as you think they do.
Again, they're protecting their brand and their name.
Yes, exactly. They're looking long-term royalty growth. They sell somebody 30 units. They're taking 30 units off the street that they can collect in the next 2 years immediately. So what's your plan to opening multiple units? How are you going to manage those businesses?
Right. So part of what we talk about in the IBC concept is somebody says, what does a perfect IBC policy look like? I said, it's the one you start today. Because sometimes that's the hard part, is just getting that first one under your belt. What you learn and understanding just grows exponentially. But at least in my mind is get the first one done. And then once you have a better understanding, then that would be a time where I'd say, okay, now I understand this a little bit better. Maybe I can do 5 or 10 or whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be 30 being your number, 20. It could just be the one. There might be one that fits you. And then once you learn that one, now you can take that knowledge and go and grow into the second, third, or fourth, or fifth opportunity.
Right. And there's a strategy there, and there's an exit strategy. And that's the other thing that we talk about in the consultation. What is your exit strategy? I always grew up with if you're going to do something that's great, But if it doesn't work out, what's your exit strategy? And if it does work out, what's even your better exit strategy? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to pass it on? Do you want to sell it and take the proceeds and roll it into something else? So again, those are important things as you decide what you want to do in the investment side of the business, the exit strategy.
Yeah, that's probably a great point to make, is what's your exit strategy if you have success, if you have failure. I don't really say failure if you don't have success, because failure is only if you fail to learn from those things that aren't successful.
Yeah, what's that old saying? If you're anything like me, you haven't learned from being successful, you've learned from failing.
Failures, right. 100%, right. But hopefully, here's the other part I've learned, is that a little more gray hair in this beard of mine, is that when we employ professionals in the industry, right? Don't go into it with the idea that I know nothing. I'm going to employ somebody that, or associate, or find a common bond with somebody that has a lot of knowledge in that industry, and find that partnership that works for us, right? So don't be afraid to spend some money to find a person, spend some time to educate yourself, or get somebody that knows what they're doing, and check your ego and your wallet at the door, and you can make some money.
Yeah. Hey, look, if you just want to explore, you have questions, feel free to reach out. There's not rocket science to this. It's just understanding, and it's all about a process. There's a process to being awarded a franchise or not. Trust me, the hardest thing I ever had to do when I was on the brand side was to tell people that I couldn't offer them a franchise. I remember one time I had to call up a couple, and I told the husband that I had good news and bad news. And he says, "What's the bad news?" I said, "The bad news is that your wife has not been awarded a franchise." He says, "Then what's the good news?" He says, "The good news is you're awarded," because his wife was just a complete, you-know-what, in the process. Very difficult, and I'm like, this is how you're going to treat me and my staff. I can't imagine how you're going to treat customers. So you talk about a firestorm. So,
right.
Thought it was the most diplomatic way I could say yes and no. Let him fight it out with his wife.
And you
think she would have picked up the phone and apologized after she told him? She called up, and you could hear her screaming throughout the whole building on speakerphone. It was just like, and I said, "Look, you just solidified my reason." I said, all you had to say was a bad hair day.
That is such a good life lesson right there. Just because somebody can do it doesn't mean they should. And
right.
Again, this is somebody's baby, and they want you to take care of it as if it was your own.
I'm a believer in take the cotton out of your ears, put it in your mouth, and listen. And that's what I try to do with my clients. Trust me, I'll give you some advice. I'll give you guidance. I'll give you everything you need to make a decision. But you've got to take the cotton out of your ears and listen as well.
100%, because you'll learn a lot more.
Yes.
Scott, I have to say thank you so much. I got 1,000 other questions. Maybe we'll do this again.
Absolutely.
But I truly appreciate the fact that you've kind of pulled back the curtains a little bit, because there's a lot of mystery to owning your franchise that I had questions to that I wasn't aware of. So thank you for pulling back the curtains, showing it to us for what it is, and it's not that complicated. It's not that difficult. Just collaborate with somebody that has some knowledge and understanding what's going on, and that's the first start.
Yep, definitely. And look, it's been great talking to you. Great questions, and I hope I've provided some insight to your listeners. And like I said, if you just have general questions, just don't hesitate to call. My process is a long process. My average client goes through a 90 to 120-day process. So this isn't, do you want blue and white, and do you want it on Tuesday and Wednesday?
Right.
It just doesn't work that way. And if that's the way you want to work, don't call me.
Well, good. I'm glad you know who you like to work with. So. But it's true. Those that have worked with me understand that it's all about knowledge and understanding, and then finding a good relationship with somebody that you really want to work with. Because I would imagine that you've created some long-term partnerships or relationships with clients over the years. It's not a one-and-done type of thing.
Just to tell you, and the other thing for your clients is you got to be positive. And I have clients calling me up now, "Hey, I want to do a business, but the economy sucks, and we're going down to a recession and this." And I go, "What'd you call me for?" I go, "Really?" I go, "Come on." I said, "Let me ask you something. If you had already owned a business and you were in this position, what would you be doing?"
Yeah.
It's the way life is. We'll get through it. We always do.
We always find a way. So before I let you go, and again, I wanted to thank you one more time, but I like to ask this question to a lot of my guests, is like, what are you reading right now? Or what would you have a recommendation of a book, just to either enlighten people a little bit on this or any other subject? I've had a guy tell me that he's reading a book on the Civil War, and so it's kind of all over the place, but I find out what people are reading or what they're engaged in conversation. Some
Uh,
people don't think they might listen a lot, so.
Yeah, no, I'm more of a listener. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big reader. I do have a couple of books. I actually send a book out to my clients on franchising, kind of escaping the 9 to 5. So that's definitely something I encourage my clients to read as we're going through the process. I'm a big listener in self-motivation, kind of getting yourself off the couch and motivating you. Sometimes I get the question from people, what is the franchisor going to do for me? Outside of the systems and best practices, you got to get off the couch and go get your clients. It's depending on what type of business it is. So I think self-motivation is a big key to this whole thing and being successful in business. I love history. It's probably one of the few subjects, one of the only subjects I did well in school. I just love American history. And so, but I have a YouTube channel. Other people have YouTube channels on franchising. You have a YouTube channel, podcasts on wealth management, building your wealth through certain cycles. So encourage people to just go out there and find it. The power of information is there. You just got to get yourself motivated to want to learn and learn to know. Get to know your know. KNOW.
Yep, I would agree. So I'll share with one of your listeners happens to be listening. I'll share the book I'm reading right now. Are you familiar with The Go-Giver?
I've heard about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bob Berg does a nice job of just laying out the idea that we want to bring more value than we ever hope to receive. And I feel that from you, Scott. I feel that you're trying to bring more value to everybody you talk to than you ever hope to receive in return.
I don't think I've ever yelled. I know I haven't gotten mad at anybody, gotten upset when somebody says, no, this isn't for me. I encourage people to be direct and upfront with me. If that's not what you want to do, then let's not do it. I'm not here to put a square peg in a round hole, especially when it comes to investing.
Life's too short.
It is. Now, people know where to find me.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, Scott, appreciate your time. Thanks so much. And like I said, maybe we can circle back and we can do this again.
Anytime, reach back out. We'll definitely do this again. It's been great getting to know you, and have a great holiday. Happy New Year. And look forward to catching up with you next year.
Okay, take care, Scott. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.